there standing up there doing the monkey. But I love it. Hey, I love it. Amen. Amen. I'm sure the Lord gets a kick out of that one. Amen. Y'all are a rowdy bunch tonight. A whole bunch. We didn't even sing a song, but we didn't clap on. Nothing tonight. Amen. Praise the Lord. If you got your Bible, let's go to the book of Ruth. Book of Ruth, chapter 1. Just want to start reading here and kind of get familiar with what's going on, and then I'm not going to read the whole entire book of Ruth, but make some references to some parts that we don't read. But just want to kind of get our minds, our hearts, our minds settled on what's being spoke about here and try to connect it into our daily Christian walk. Chapter 1 and verse 1, the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth. Joshua judges Ruth. Amen. Help us, Lord. Only you know how to preach, God. God, just let me follow close behind you, Father. Lord, as I'm led to speak, Lord, let me speak, God. But Lord, let those words, God, be of you and not of me. God, that you can use them. Lord, you can't use anything of me. But God, you certainly take your word, God, and comfort our hearts and lead us, guide us, direct us in our Christian walk. And we ask you to do that now. Save the lost. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Chapter 1 and verse 1, the Bible says, "Now it came to pass in the day when the judges ruled, and there was a famine in the land, and there was a man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Amalek, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion, Ephraimites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into a country of Moab and continued there. And Amalek and Naomi's husband died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughter-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return into the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go, return each to his mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said unto her, "Surely we will return with thee unto thy people." And Naomi said, "Turn again, my daughters, why will ye go with me? Are there not yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me." And they lift up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave to her. And she said, "Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back into her people and to her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law." And Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave thee, nor to return from following after thee. For whether thou goest, I will go, and whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. and thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. And when she saw that she was steadfast-minded to go with her, then she left, speaking unto her. You can be seated. In the land of Israel, in the city of Bethlehem, Judah, where Amalek, his wife Naomi, 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, lived, there came a great famine in the land. Famine in the land in that time was used against the children of Israel when God brought judgment for disobedience to His Word. He brought the judgment into the land. And this is what has happened here. And then when the famine began to wax real sore, and everybody was really in trouble for want of something to eat, food for the table even, Amalek decided that the best thing for him and his family was to leave the land of God, the land of promise, the place where God had established him and his family, for he was a landowner there. He owned land, and God had always made provision for His people, even when they were in judgment. Even they were in judgment for disobedience, God still provided for His people. Never let them starve to death, or never let them be pressed beyond what they could bear. But Amalek decided, well, listen, I've heard in Moab that they've got money to spare, man. There's just all kind of jobs there, and I should leave my home and go there because that's where I can find prosperity and find food for my family. Even though Amalek knew that was not God's will. That was not God's will. And I see it, and we see it time and time again. I've seen it many times in my lifetime where people go through a tough patch in their life, hard times in their life, and they see that there's money over here or there's money over there, and they decide that it's going to be best for me to give up all that I'm doing here, all that, even if they feel that they're in a place where God put them at. They think that over there will override anything that God is doing here for them. That's very seldom ever true. When you begin to chase that almighty dollar and you no longer look to God for your provisions, as a child of God, you're looking for trouble. There's trouble out ahead. Can I get amen? Amen. Amen. How many of y'all have experienced that very thing, chasing that job and wind up out of the will of God? Amen. I've done it myself. All of us have done it. And this is simply another story about how that went in the life of Naomi and Amalek and his 2 sons. Well, they were there, and shortly after they got there, then Amalek died. The breadwinner, the dad, the leader of the family, all of a sudden, the family's without leadership. The father's dead. And now, Naomi and her 2 sons are just going to catch as catch can, do the best they can where they're at. And they determined to marry 2 Moabite women. Well, it wasn't against the command of God to marry a Moabite, but it was in the law of God that a Moabitish woman could not come into the congregation of the children of Israel. Never. But you'll see God, as we move forward in His sovereignty, determined, like I said, it was not a command. It didn't break a command. But I guess kind of saying, if God had His druthers, He'd rather you wouldn't do that. because you're going to be led astray by their gods, by the idols that they worship. But they went ahead and they married two of the women of the land, Ruth and Orpah. And then shortly thereafter, they died. And now there's only Naomi and her two daughters-in-laws in the land. Even still in the land that God had not led them to go to, or led Naomi to go to. Orpah and Ruth were just kind of come in at the tail end of the story. And they stayed there some 10 years. 10 years. So this happened relatively quick in their lifetime, in a 10-year span. The husband and the two boys are dead, married and dead. So here they are, and then in the Jewish Targums, which is the history of the Jewish people, you'll find a place in there where it said that Naomi heard from an angel, that an angel had visited her and told her, that's not in the Bible, but an angel had visited her and told her there was bread in Bethlehem again. There was bread in Bethlehem. And she decided to go back. Though when they left the land, of Israel, Naomi had lost the land of Amalek. And she could not go back there and say, well, I'm a child of the children of Israel, and I can possess the land that my husband owned again. That opportunity had been lost. So she went back there simply a beggar. She had nothing when she got back to the land of Israel. And she knew that before she ever left Moab, but she was going back to the land of her God. And her two daughters-in-law said, I'm going to go with you. And she said, no, go back to your land, to your idols, to your gods, and I'll go to my land and to my God. And Oprah said, finally, after a little convincing, Oprah said, I'll go. And she left and went back to Moab and back to her family's home. But Ruth said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Now this is a picture of what she's about to say to to Naomi. Ruth is about to say to Naomi, is the life of consecration. This is the decision you must make when you come to the Lord for eternal life. When you come to Him to be saved, these are the terms on which you know that you're leaving the world. You're leaving the world and you're coming to Him. And now you're leaving behind your past desires to chase after the world system, I guess would be the best way to put it, or to any longer live in the world system and the way it provides. Leaving the world's economy and coming into God's economy, if you will. As a child of God, I want to tell you this. As a child of God, trying to live outside of the economy of God is useless. It's just wasteful. It's not going to happen. And you as a child of God, and I'm talking about with your finances now. If you ever intend for your finances to ever get to any normalcy, any way of dependence, you're going to have to line up with the economy of God. Amen. And come into God's economy. The reason you do that is to take a stand and say, you know what? Either way, push, pull, or shove, I'm His. Amen. And I belong to Him. And He will take care of my needs as long as I stay in His will. As long as I stay in His will, will He provide me a brand new Rolls Royce and that's foolishness. God, you're claiming a God that doesn't exist in the Bible. That's not the God of the Bible. He assured, not that He may not. I don't say He might. If you can handle it, if you can do it, God won't begrudge you of it. But it's not really in the character of man to stay very long committed to God when you're rolling in riches. Because your dependency begins to become your riches and no longer God. And Now, not everybody, certainly not everybody, but the nature of man, that's what it follows. That's the way it goes. And when God blesses us to the overflow, most of the time we forget God and we no longer need Him. But as long as when you join into the economy of God, God will see to it that there's food on your table and shoes on your feet and a roof over your head. God will not leave you destitute if you'll trust Him. So, and this is where Naomi is at. And of course, this is where Ruth is at. And Ruth has been around Naomi long enough, apparently, to have determined in her heart, said, you know what? I may not know everything, but I know my God, or her God, is going to be my God. This God that she has represented the last 10 years that I've known her, that's the kind of God I want to know. That's the kind of God I want to serve. Because she still, even after the loss of her husband and both of her sons in the land of Moab, she sees her ultimate victory, her ultimate utopia in Israel. And serving the God that she claimed even after her husband and her two sons were dead. Then she said, you know what? I'm going to serve the God of Naomi. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee. Here's consecration. Here's determination of eternal soul salvation. She said, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. And whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. And thy people shall be my people, and thy God shall be my God. Amen. Where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. And when Naomi saw that she was steadfast minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. Naomi saw that look in her eye when she said, your God is going to be my God, and your people is going to be my people. And Naomi said, you know what? You can't talk her out of it. She's going. So she left off talking to her. That's the decision made for Christ in your life. That's the decision I believe every one of you young people on the front row here have made. That's a life decision. Whether thou goest, I'll go. Whether thou lodgest, I'll lodge. You'll follow Him. She said, and whether thou die and be buried, I'll die and be buried. He said, it's not going to change in me. So this is that place of solid encouragement to always remember. God will never leave you, never forsake you. Regardless of the paths that you determine to take in life, God will always stand where He always was, and He'll always be found in the same place. He doesn't move around with God. He's steadfast and sure, and He will always be there when you call. Regardless of how dark and how messed up life may get, God will not abandon you. God will see you through. It may not be easy, and Lord knows sometimes it ain't going to be fun, but God will stand true, and He will always be there for you. Amen. Ask everybody in this room, regardless of who you are, when you determine in your heart to turn away from the world and quit looking to the world, that's where the children of God get in such a mess. And you see those that try to live halfway in, halfway out. That's a rough life. That is a rough life. It is hard for God to bless you. It is hard for God to let you experience the abundance of the life that He gave you when you hopping in and hopping out, and hopping in and hopping out. It's hard for God to bless you. And you stay in a turmoil in your mind and in your heart. It's constantly just a turmoil, like a fruit salad. Your whole life is just tossed to and fro, and you have to catch what you can catch and get what you can get, and the rest we'll just see. And all the heartache and pain and trouble that is caused by that is exampled in Naomi's life. The loss of her husband. She didn't know what to do. A woman in Israel that had lost her husband was simply lost, because there was such a dependence upon the man of the family to provide in those days that she was literally lost. But many of you women in this room would have to admit, if I lost the one I got now, I'd be in trouble. I wouldn't know what in the world to do. I wouldn't know what in the world to do without my wife. I'm going to tell you, she's leaving next Sunday to go on what is it? A cruise out in the water on a boat for a week with Lyndon and Ann and several other couples here in the church, and all of them going to jump on a boat and head out there and flip-flop around in the water and all. I'm not going. First off, I ain't get on no boat that goes that far away from land to do anything. If I can't still reach the dirt, I'm not going that far. Not built for that. Don't like that, but I don't begrudge them to go. They're gonna have gospel singing and preaching and all that. They're gonna have a glory hallelujah time. But I'd be watching the boat and checking the water level and all that. I wouldn't be having me no good time. So and I'll be doing that her for a week. I can barely make it a week without my wife. I'm gonna be honest with you. Just barely skimming by. Amen. And I got women in the church and Sandy's in the church that'll bring me stuff to eat and all in that week, and I'll still near about not make it. Okay? So I can imagine what Naomi felt in a foreign land. Nobody. And these people, I hear these people all the time, I'm moving to Michigan from Mississippi. Why? What? I ain't moving out of pedal, Jack, for nothing. Except when I move to heaven. That's going to be my next address. Otherwise, I ain't going. I don't really care to leave the city limits now. Amen. I'm telling you, I don't go nowhere. I don't want to go nowhere. Amen. I'm home. Till my heavenly home is prepared. So Ruth has determined in her heart, she says, you know what? And Ruth was raised in Moab. And she was a Moabite. Her centuries of her ancestors had been in Moab. And that's what she knew. But she had determined in her heart that this God of Naomi, the God of Israel, was going to be her God. I want to close tonight's message. I want to read the verse one more time. And I want to ask you, is this where you stand with the Lord tonight? And if not, this is where God's trying to get you to. This is what God's greatest will for your life is to get you to this place. And I thank God that there's many families in this church that they hadn't got everything God wants them to have, and they're not nearly everything God wants them to be, but they have made some decisions in their life, and they no longer live in the land of Moab, and they have determined that they are citizens with the people of God, and they know that, and I thank God that they've at least reached that place in their life, and I pray that everybody in this church would reach that place in their life, that they say, you know what, I may not have it all, but I've got God. Amen. And as long as I got God, I'm not going to do without it. And I'll always be able to provide for my family. I'll always, and I serve an awesome God that's going to take care of me, and not only here, but when this life is over, I'm going to be with Him, resting eternally with Him. And I thank God for that. So let's read this one more time, and I'll close. And Ruth said, entreat me, talking with her mother-in-law, entreat me not to leave thee. Ruth said, I don't want to leave you. and return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. Lord, whatever it is, wherever you send me. I was talking to Eric about this very thing this week, where God finally persuaded him to sell his home, to sell out, and head to Kenya. I admire that. I admire that. That's great, and God has got people set aside to do those. Thank God it hasn't been me thus far. And He may tell me to leave tomorrow, and I'm going to tell you right now, and the only way I would is if God led me to do so. But as I looked at him, I said, Eric, he sold everything. He did. The bathtub and all, sink, everything. Kitchen, somebody calls kitchen sink and everything. He threw the whole thing in. And he invested it in God. I want to go over yonder. He wants to see 1,000 people saved this first year. And he's working pretty good on it right now. He's had quite a few saved since he started over there. And he wants to claim 1,000 for the glory of God this first year that he's over there. And to be, listen, he's talking about I'm talking about in a land far, far away. Far, far away. Way away. You can't walk to there. You can't drive there from here. Amen. Kenya's a long way over yonder. And he's over in a foreign land over there. Don't know nobody. Don't know nobody. And he's building a home that'll house 20 girls to get them out of sex trafficking and help the whole community. And there's hundreds of them gathered around him that he's trying to rescue out of that life in the midst of the devil himself. That land is indwelled with the devil himself. There's more witch doctors, way more witch doctors than there are preachers where he lives, that follow the occult, follow death and dying and skulls and all of that stuff, voodoo and terrible stuff, and he's in the midst of it trying to serve God. She said, I'll go where thou goest, I'll lodge where you lodge, and thy people will be my people. And then the last year says, and thy God, my God. Claiming God to be hers. Claiming eternal life. Claiming to believe in no other way. God's way to heaven. And now that's through the precious blood of Jesus Christ. I'm going that way. This is total consecration that I'm turning away from the past life that I lived. Tired of it. How many of you got tired of the way the world treats you till you finally said, you know what? I've had enough of that stuff. I had enough of that stuff. The only friendship you really got out there is that you can afford to buy. If you can't, you're only going to have it as long as you can afford it. And then when you no longer a benefit to them, you're out the door. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. That's the system in which they live upon. That's the way they live. I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live that way. And listen to me. If you now are a friend of mine, and that covers everybody, if you're a friend of mine, what I got, you got. What I got, you got. Whatever I got belongs to you. If you need it, you got it. My truck, my house. Only thing you can't have is my wife. That's it. Anything else I got, if you need it, you got it. I don't hung up with it. I don't put anything into it. I don't put any, stick them in that. I know we do stuff too. I'm leaving.
That's right.
I'm just borrowing that house till the Lord calls me out of here. And I certainly don't want to live there for eternity. Amen? The house God's preparing for me, man, my little house wouldn't hold a candle to that. So, if you're here in this church, if you're a part of this church, you know, And if you don't know, you should know. You're never going to go down unless we all go down. And we ain't all going down unless the Lord goes down. And the Lord ain't going down. He'll reign supreme always. Always. And this church, and there's none that compares with it. None. I don't care where you go, to the north or to the south, the east or the west. There's none that compares with Vision Baptist Church and the love. And the love that it has for its people. Do all things for the cause of God's people. Whatever we got, you got. Amen. Make that commitment today. Many of you say, well, I'm already saved. There's many people that are truly saved, but they're still a good ways from that commitment. They've never entered into God's economy, to God's way of prospering His people. They've always held back for fear that God's not going to come through. I've had people tell me, and every one of you in here would say the same thing. You've heard it. Brother Jimmy, I can't afford to tithe. You've got that backwards. You can't afford not to. And the reason you can't is because you can't, because you think you can't afford not to. But God ain't going to show you that until you exercise that faith. And then you'll believe. God don't put you, He don't give it to you, and so you'll believe. That's not faith. He says, show me your faith with your works. See? You got to do something. God's already done something. He died. He left heaven. He died on Calvary's cross. He gave Himself for you. His whole self for you. And so I'm going to wait till the Lord proves it to me. Ooh, I wouldn't challenge you to do that. You'll find out quick. You see? And there's also scriptures in the Bible in the Old Testament. I know we don't go strictly by the Old Testament. We use it as principles to live by. Either you'll give the 10 or He'll take 23 and a half. He'll take 23 and a half. Or you'll settle with the 10 and let God take care of it. So, as I close, I want you to think about, am I consecrated to God? Does my life belong to Him like Ruth was talking about? A consecrated commitment like that? Is that truly where I stand? Is that truly how I live my life? If so, there's a great peace and comfort in knowing that you live inside of God's will. And you belong to Him. You're His responsibility. He's going to see you through it. He's going to walk with you through it. Father, as we close, thank you, Lord.